The silk knot was perfect. Megan's fingers stilled against the cool fabric, aware suddenly of how close she was standing. Close enough to smell the sandalwood and gunpowder that clung to Geraldo Milani like a second skin. Closer, his voice rumbled, low enough that only she could hear. She looked up from the Windsor knot she'd been perfecting to find his dark eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. The morning routine. That's all this was supposed to be. 6 months of mornings just like this one, and he'd never looked at her like this before. Her heart kicked against her ribs. "I'm sorry, what?" His hand came up, fingers brushing her wrist where it rested against his chest. "You heard me, Megan. If you believe that even mafia bosses deserve a chance at love, subscribe and like the story to show you agree." The penthouse was silent except for the distant hum of the city 40 floors below. The other staff had been dismissed. Just the two of them in his private suite, in this moment that felt suspended, dangerous. She should step back. Should remember her place. But 6 months of invisibility, of being the perfect, unseen maid, had worn her patience thin. Something reckless stirred in her chest. "If you want me closer, Mr. Milani," she said, voice steadier than she felt, "maybe you should just say so." His pupils dilated. Several expressions crossed his face too quickly to read, settling finally into something dark and hungry that made heat pool low in her belly. Before he could respond, the sound of the penthouse door slamming open shattered the moment like a gunshot. Megan felt him before she saw him. Dino Marcello filled the doorway like a predator who'd scented blood. All swagger and malice wrapped in an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the violence underneath. His eyes found her immediately, raking over her maid's uniform with an assessment that made her skin crawl. "Well, well." Dino's voice cut through the silence, amused and cruel. "The mouse has her hands on the boss." "How domestic." Geraldo's body went rigid beneath her touch. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with barely controlled force, pulling her flush against his side. The message was unmistakable. The entire room had shifted, the air thick with threat. "Get out," Geraldo said, his voice quiet, deadly calm. But Dino was already walking in, making himself comfortable, two of his men flanking the doorway. He pulled out a crystal glass, helped himself to Geraldo's scotch, all performative ease masking coiled violence. "I came to discuss business." Dino swirled the amber liquid, watching them over the rim. "But I have to say, I'm distracted. Rumors don't do her justice, Geraldo. Your little house mouse." His smile widened. "Word is she's still, untouched, unspoiled." Megan's stomach dropped. The blood drained from her face. "I hear," Dino continued, voice dropping to something obscene, "that kind of purity is rare in our world. A perfect prize for a man who doesn't mind a little hunt. Makes me wonder why you've kept her so close, so protected, and yet never claimed her." The implication hung in the air like poison. Geraldo's grip on her wrist tightened to the point of pain. She could feel his pulse hammering against her palm, could sense the fury radiating off him in waves. When she dared to look up at his face, what she saw there stole her breath. Not just anger. Not just protective instinct. Possession. Raw, undeniable, and completely irrational given he'd never indicated personal interest in her beyond the professional distance a boss maintained with staff. Except she could read him now. In this moment of crisis, the mask had shattered. The metallic click of a safety being released echoed through the penthouse. Dino's hand rested casually on the weapon at his hip, fingers drumming against the grip. "So here's my question, Geraldo." Dino's eyes glittered with malice. "Are you going to share? Or do I need to take what you're too weak to claim?" "Touch her," Geraldo said, voice like granite, like a promise of death, "and I'll bury you in pieces your own mother won't recognize. Then claim her." Dino spread his hands, the picture of false reason. "Right now. Prove she's yours. Or admit you're soft, that you've been protecting something you don't have the balls to take." Megan's world tilted. Her routine, her safety, her carefully maintained invisibility, all of it dissolved in the space of 5 minutes. She'd become a prize in a game she didn't understand, caught between two predators, and the man whose tie she'd been adjusting moments ago was looking at her like she was the only thing standing between him and complete destruction. Megan. Geraldo's voice was rough, urgent. He turned her to face him fully, both hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness. I need you to trust me. Right now. She should be terrified. Should be calculating escape routes. But in his eyes, those dark, unreadable eyes that had watched her for 6 months with carefully maintained distance, she saw the truth he'd been hiding. He'd been protecting her, yes, but not from obligation. From himself. What are you going to do? She whispered. His thumb traced her bottom lip, and the gesture was so intimate, so claiming, that she heard Dino's sharp intake of breath across the room. What I should have done months ago, Geraldo said. I'm making you mine. Publicly. Irrevocably. And anyone who tries to take you from me will learn exactly how far I'm willing to go. The silk tie hung perfectly against his chest, her knot still holding despite everything. But the cage, Megan realized, had already closed around them both. And the capo with the gun was just the beginning. Geraldo's hand was an iron band around her wrist as he pulled her through the penthouse. Megan stumbled, her sensible flat sliding on the polished marble, but he didn't slow. Didn't look back. Behind them, she could hear Dino's mocking laughter echoing through the main room, the sound of crystal clinking as he helped himself to more scotch like he owned the place. You're making a mistake, Geraldo. Dino's voice carried, casual and poisonous. Running away doesn't change the facts. Geraldo's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump. His silence was more terrifying than any response would have been. He yanked her around a corner, past the formal dining room she'd dusted 1,000 times, past the gallery wall of artwork worth more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. They were moving deeper into the penthouse, into areas she'd only glimpsed during her carefully supervised cleaning rotations. Mr. Milani, she tried, voice shaking. Please, I don't understand what's not here. His voice was clipped, controlled, but she could hear the fury simmering beneath. Not where he can hear. They reached a door she'd never been through. Solid steel disguised as elegant wood paneling, with a biometric scanner instead of a traditional lock. Geraldo pressed his palm to it without releasing her wrist, and the lock disengaged with a soft click that sounded unnaturally loud in the tense silence. The space beyond was nothing like the rest of the penthouse. Where the main areas were all cold elegance and calculated displays of wealth, this was personal. Intimate. A living room with furniture that actually looked used, bookshelves packed with worn spines, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a dizzying view of the city. And beyond that, she could see the edge of a bedroom through an open doorway. His private wing. The place even the head housekeeper wasn't allowed to clean. Megan's heart hammered against her ribs as the reality of the situation crashed over her. She was alone with Geraldo Milani in his personal sanctuary, and downstairs a rival capo had just challenged her status, her safety, her entire existence in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. Geraldo finally released her wrist. She immediately stepped back, putting the length of a leather sofa between them, her hands shaking as she pressed them against the cool material. I want an explanation, she said, proud that her voice came out steady. Right now. He stood with his back to the door, watching her with those dark eyes that had seen too much, done too much. His perfectly knotted tie, her work, was still immaculate, but everything else about him screamed barely contained violence. His hands flexed at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her again. You want an explanation? His laugh was bitter, humorless. Where would you like me to start, Megan? With Dino Marcello's ambitions? With the fact that he's been looking for a weakness in my organization for 6 months? Or with the fact that apparently my weakness has been living under my roof, invisible to everyone but me? The confession hit her like a physical blow. What? Don't pretend you don't know. He moved then, prowling around the sofa with predatory grace. She held her ground, refusing to retreat further. You think I keep staff on for 6 months without references? Without a background that checks out beyond reasonable doubt? You think I personally interview maids? Her mind was racing, trying to reconcile this with the distant, controlled man she'd served breakfast to every morning. You never said anything. Never even looked at me like what? Like I wanted you? He was close now, close enough that she could see the dangerous intensity in his expression. I've been looking at you exactly like that since the day you walked into my office for that interview. Since you sat in that chair with your spine straight and your hands folded and told me you didn't care who I was or what I did, you just needed honest work and you'd earn every dollar. Megan's breath caught. She remembered that interview. Remembered being desperate enough to answer an ad that had seemed too good to be true. Remembered the way Geraldo had studied her with those unreadable eyes and said simply, "You start Monday." That was 6 months ago, she whispered. 6 months of watching you move through my home like you belonged here. 6 months of you being the only genuine thing in my world. 6 months of knowing that the moment I touched you, the moment I crossed that line, I'd destroy the one innocent thing I had left. His hand came up, fingers hovering near her face, but not quite touching. And then Dino walked in and made you a target, and all that restraint became worthless. Her mind was spinning. So what now? What does this mean? It means you're mine. The words were simple, absolute, delivered with the same certainty he probably used when ordering executions. It means you don't go back to the staff quarters. You don't wear that uniform again. You don't leave this wing without my personal security. It means I'm a prisoner. The anger finally cut through her shock, sharp and clarifying. You're claiming ownership of me because some rival made a crude challenge and you can't stand losing face. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Is that what you think this is? Ego? What else could it be? You never spoke to me. Never indicated anything beyond professional distance. And now suddenly I'm supposed to believe that I've been obsessed with you? That I know you take your coffee black because you think adding sugar is wasteful? That you hum when you think no one's listening, always the same melody? That you rearrange my books by author when you dust because the color coding bothers you? His voice had dropped to something raw, unguarded. That I kept you close because having you near was the only thing that made this life bearable, and I was selfish enough to keep that for myself even knowing I could never have more? Megan stared at him, this powerful, dangerous man who'd just stripped himself bare with words, and felt her carefully constructed understanding of reality crumble. The silk tie was still perfect against his chest, her not holding. But everything else had come undone. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Megan's hands gripped the back of the sofa so hard her knuckles went white. Geraldo stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, could see the rapid pulse at his throat that betrayed how much his confession had cost him. "This is insane," she said finally. "You're telling me my entire life for the past 6 months has been a lie?" "Not a lie." His voice was rough. "Unnecessary distance." Distance. She laughed, the sound sharp and slightly hysterical. "You watched me. Studied me. Apparently memorized my coffee preferences and my humming, and you call that distance? What would you call it?" He leaned closer, one hand bracing on the sofa beside hers. "Because from where I'm standing, it was the only thing keeping you safe. The only thing keeping me from doing exactly what Dino accused me of, taking something I had no right to take." The words hung between them, loaded with implication. Megan's breath came faster. She should be afraid. Should be calculating how to get out of this wing, this penthouse, this entire situation. But beneath the fear and confusion was something else. Something that had been building for 6 months of stolen glances and moments of unexpected intimacy disguised as mundane routine. "Why?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you just pursue me properly? Ask me to dinner? Act like a normal person instead of a normal person." His smile was bitter. "Megan, I run the largest crime organization on the East Coast. I've killed men for less than Dino's challenge today. There is nothing normal about what I am or what I can offer you. So you decided to keep me as what? Your untouchable fantasy?" The anger was building now, hot and clarifying. "You paid me poverty wages to clean your home and serve your meals while you played some twisted game of restraint?" "I paid you twice the market rate," he shot back. "And assigned you a security detail you never knew about. And made it clear to everyone in my organization that you were off limits, untouchable, mine in every way that mattered except the one that would have condemned you." "Condemned me?" She pushed away from the sofa, needing space to think. And what exactly do you think this is? You've just claimed me publicly to a rival capo. You've locked me in your private wing. How is this any different from the condemnation you were supposedly protecting me from? Because now I can protect you properly. He followed her movement, stalking her across the room like she was prey. Now you're not vulnerable. You're claimed. Mine. And anyone who touches you knows they're starting a war. A war I never asked to be part of. Her back hit the window, the cold glass a shock through her thin uniform. This morning I was invisible, safe in my insignificance. And now you've made me a target because you couldn't stand the idea of someone else having what you wanted. You think you were safe? His control finally cracked. You think Dino was the first to notice you? The first to see a weakness in my organization? I've had to neutralize 3 separate threats in the past 6 months. Men who thought a maid with no protection, no claim, would be easy leverage. The confession hit her like ice water. What? You were never invisible, Megan. Not to me, and not to anyone paying attention. The only thing keeping you alive was my implicit protection. The moment I hired you, the moment I kept you on past a week, you became mine in everyone's eyes except your own. She stared at him, this man who'd apparently been waging a silent war for her safety while she'd believed herself beneath notice. The revelation should have terrified her. Instead, it ignited something reckless. Then why? She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. If I was already yours, already at risk, why the restraint? Why 6 months of distance when you clearly wanted, because you were innocent? The words came out harsh, almost anguished. Because you came into my office with hope in your eyes and I couldn't stand the idea of being the one to extinguish it. Because taking you would have made you complicit in everything I am, everything I do, and I thought I was strong enough to protect you without claiming you completely. But you weren't. Her heart was hammering now, some wild part of her understanding what he wasn't saying. You weren't strong enough. No. He reached out, fingers finally making contact, tracing the line of her jaw with devastating gentleness. I wasn't. 6 months of watching you, wanting you, knowing I couldn't have you. It was the closest thing to penance I've ever allowed myself. The confession broke something in her. Some last resistance that had been holding her upright, keeping her safe behind walls of propriety and self-preservation. She should hate him for the position he'd put her in. Should rage at being made a possession, a prize in a game she didn't understand. But she'd spent 6 months feeling the weight of his attention like a physical touch. 6 months of that electric awareness every time she entered a room he occupied. 6 months of telling herself she was imagining the hunger in his eyes, the way his voice changed when he spoke her name. You're telling me my safety depends on this claim, she said slowly. That the only way I survive in your world is as your possession. Yes. Then I want honesty. She met his eyes, refusing to look away. No more restraint. No more noble distance. If I'm condemned to this life, if I'm yours in every way that matters, then I want to know exactly what that means. Something dangerous lit in his expression. Megan, why didn't you just sleep with me months ago? The question came out bold, reckless. If you wanted me so badly, if I was already at risk, why did you wait? His hand slid from her jaw to her throat, not restricting, just claiming, his thumb resting against her racing pulse. Because taking your body would have been easy. But I wanted more than that. I wanted you to choose this. Choose me. Despite everything I am. And if I don't? His smile was dark, possessive, completely unrepentant. Then I'll spend every day convincing you until you do. Because you're right, Megan. The cage closed the moment Dino walked in. But I'm not letting you go. His thumb traced her pulse point, feeling the wild rhythm beneath her skin. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows cast them both in stark relief, predator and prey caught in a moment that could tip either direction. But Megan had spent 6 months learning to read the subtle shifts in Geraldo Milani's expression, and what she saw now wasn't just hunger. It was need, raw and desperate enough to be a weakness. And weakness, she was learning, could be leverage. No. The word came out steadier than she felt. She wrapped her fingers around his wrist, not pulling his hand away but holding it in place. A claim of her own. This doesn't work like that. His eyes narrowed. You don't get to dictate terms. Don't I? She tilted her head, studying him with new eyes. You just admitted you've been obsessed with me for 6 months. That you've wanted me badly enough to wage a silent war to keep me safe. That sounds like someone who needs me as much as he wants me. Need is a dangerous word. But he didn't pull away, didn't retreat into the cold control she'd seen him use on everyone else. So is property. She let that land, watched his expression shift. You keep talking about claiming me, owning me, making me yours. Like I'm something to be acquired and possessed. Another asset in your empire. You're mine. The words were automatic, possessive. No, she pushed forward, forcing him back a step. I'm not. I'm not your maid anymore, fine. I accept that my old life is over, that I can't go back to invisibility. I even accept that being claimed by you is probably the only thing keeping me alive right now. But I will not be your property. Then what do you want to be? The question came out harsh, but beneath it she heard genuine confusion. Like the idea of her having agency in this was a foreign concept. Your partner. She said it clearly, firmly. Your equal. Not some possession you keep locked in your private wing like a prize. If I'm condemned to this life, if my safety depends on being yours, then I want actual choice in what that means. You don't understand what you're asking. He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the perfect styling. My world doesn't work like that. There are rules, hierarchies. I can protect a possession. I can't protect an equal. Then you'll have to figure it out. She crossed her arms, holding her ground. Because I won't be invisible anymore, Geraldo. Not in the way I was as your maid, and not in the way you're describing now. If you want me to stand by your side, to be yours publicly, then I need to actually be by your side. Not hidden away for my own protection. You have no idea what you're asking for. His voice dropped to something dangerous. My life is violent. Brutal. The things I do, the decisions I make, I don't need to be protected from the truth. I need to be trusted with it. There was a reckless momentum building in her chest, 6 months of suppressed frustration finally finding an outlet. You say you've been watching me, learning me. Then you should know I'm not some delicate thing that breaks under pressure. I know exactly how strong you are. The admission came reluctantly. It's one of the things that made staying away so difficult. Then treat me like it. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them again. You want me to choose this? Choose you? Then give me something worth choosing. Not possession. Not protection in exchange for compliance. Something real. And what does real look like to you? His hand came up, fingers tangling in her hair with barely restrained need. What exactly are you bargaining for, Megan? Court me. The words came out bold, reckless. Like an actual person. Take me to dinner. Tell me about your life, your world. Let me decide if I can live in it before you lock me into it completely. I'll stand by you publicly. I'll be yours in whatever way keeps us both safe. But I want a choice in how this happens. You're demanding I date you. His laugh was incredulous. In the middle of a crisis. While Dino Marcello is downstairs plotting how to use you against me. I'm demanding you see me as more than something to claim. She met his eyes, refusing to back down. You said you wanted me to choose you. That you waited 6 months because you wanted more than just my body. Prove it. The silence stretched between them, dangerous and electric. She could see the war happening behind his eyes, need battling with control, desire fighting with the instinct to dominate and possess. His fingers tightened in her hair, and for a moment she thought he might simply take what he wanted, consequences be damned. Then his grip loosened. His thumb traced her bottom lip with devastating gentleness. You're going to get us both killed, he said, but there was something like respect in his voice. But fine. You want courtship? Partnership? I'll give you that. But we do it my way, on my terms, in my world. Our world. She caught his hand, holding his gaze. If I'm your partner, it's ours. His smile was dark, possessive, but underneath it she saw something that looked almost like hope. Our world, he agreed. But Megan, understand this. I'm not a good man. Courtship in my world means teaching you how to survive in it. Partnership means standing beside me when I do terrible things. And choosing me means accepting all of it. I know, and somehow she did. 6 months of watching him from the shadows, of learning the careful control and the violence simmering beneath, had prepared her better than he realized. But I choose on my terms. With my eyes open. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers in a gesture that felt more intimate than any kiss. Then we have a deal. But when this is over, when Dino is handled and you understand exactly what you've bargained for, I'm claiming you completely. No more negotiations. Her heart hammered against her ribs, fear and anticipation tangling into something she couldn't name. When I'm ready, she corrected. When I choose it. His laugh was low, dangerous, full of dark promise. We'll see. What would you demand if your safety depended on becoming someone's claimed partner? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe for the next part of the story. The rest of the day passed in surreal fragments. Geraldo made calls in rapid Italian while Megan sat on his leather sofa, trying to process the fact that her entire life had been dismantled in the space of a morning. Security personnel she'd never seen before appeared with her belongings, what few possessions she'd kept in the staff quarters. Someone brought lunch on fine china, food she'd never been served in 6 months of living here. Geraldo ate nothing, just watched her with those dark eyes while conducting business that sounded increasingly tense. Dino had left hours ago, but his presence lingered like smoke. By evening, the adrenaline had faded, leaving Megan hollow and exhausted. She stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker to life, her reflection ghostly against the darkening sky. Behind her, she heard Geraldo end another call, the silence that followed heavy with unspoken tension. You should eat something, he said. I'm not hungry. She didn't turn around. What happens now? Tomorrow? Next week? Tomorrow we start preparing you. His footsteps approached, stopping just behind her. You'll learn how to move in my world. How to read threats. How to protect yourself. Because I'm your partner. She let the word sit between them, testing its weight. Because you're mine, and I need you to survive what's coming. She finally turned to face him. The carefully controlled mask he wore for the rest of the world had slipped. He looked tired, she realized. Almost human beneath the dangerous exterior. In the dim light of early evening, without his suit jacket, sleeves rolled to his elbows, he could almost be mistaken for an ordinary man. Almost. Why? The question had been building all day. Why does this matter so much to you? I'm nobody. A maid you hired off a questionable ad. What makes me worth starting a war over? Something shuddered in his expression. You should rest. No. She stepped closer. You demanded honesty from me. You want me to choose this life, choose you, with my eyes open. Then I need the same from you. What aren't you telling me? Megan, why do you value innocence so much? She pushed, sensing she was close to something important. You said taking me would make me complicit in what you are. You've kept me at arm's length to protect something you called the one innocent thing you had left. Why does that matter? The muscle in his jaw jumped. This isn't, it is. She closed the distance between them. You want partnership? Then talk to me like a partner. What happened? The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved past her to the bar cart, pouring 2 fingers of scotch with hands that weren't entirely steady. He downed it in one swallow before speaking. I had a sister. The words came out flat, carefully devoid of emotion. Younger than me by 5 years. Sophia. Had. The past tense sat like lead in Megan's stomach. When our father died, I inherited the organization. I was 23. Too young, too ambitious, too certain I could control everything. Geraldo poured another drink but didn't touch it. Sophia was 18, sheltered, innocent. Everything this life hadn't touched yet. Megan's chest tightened. What happened? I thought I could keep her separate. Keep her clean. She could go to university, have a normal life, while I handled the family business. He laughed, bitter and sharp. I was so goddamn arrogant. Thought my protection was enough. It wasn't. No. The word came out raw. A rival family saw an opportunity. Someone I dismissed as minor, beneath my notice. They took her to send a message. To show me I wasn't as untouchable as I thought. Megan wanted to reach for him, but held herself still, sensing he needed space to finish this. We got her back. Geraldo's hands gripped the bar cart edge, knuckles white. 3 days later. Alive. But what they'd done to her in those 3 days, he stopped, jaw clenched so hard she could see the tremor. She was never the same. Never innocent again. And it was my fault. My arrogance, my failure to see the threat, my belief that I could keep something pure in the middle of all this darkness. How long ago? Megan's voice came out whisper-soft. 8 years. He finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. She lasted 2 years after. Pills, they said. An accident. But I knew better. I destroyed her by trying to keep her safe. By making her a target through my protection while refusing to actually prepare her for what that meant. The confession hung between them, ugly and honest. Megan understood now. The careful distance. The restraint. The obsession with her innocence. You thought you were making the same mistake with me. I knew I was. He moved toward her with predatory grace. From the moment I hired you, I knew keeping you close would paint a target on your back. But I couldn't help myself. You were so goddamn genuine. So untouched by all of this. And I told myself that as long as I didn't cross the line, as long as I didn't claim you, you could stay that way. But I was already at risk. You were always at risk. That's what I learned too late with Sophia. There's no such thing as protection without possession in this world. The moment you matter to someone with power, you become a weapon to be used against them. The only question is whether you're claimed enough to be defended properly. So you let Dino force your hand. Let him turn a private obsession into a public claim because you couldn't make that choice yourself. I was a coward. The admission came hard. I wanted you desperately, but I was too afraid of destroying another innocent thing. Of failing to protect what mattered most. Again. Megan processed this, her heart aching for the girl who'd paid the price for her brother's protection. For the man who'd spent 8 years trying to atone by maintaining impossible distance. I'm not your sister. She said it gently but firmly. I'm not 18 and sheltered. I've survived my own darkness before I ever walked into your office. That's why I answered that ad. Why I took a job that seemed too good to be true. Because I needed the kind of protection that didn't ask questions. What darkness? His attention sharpened. Everyone has a past, Geraldo. Even maids with questionable references. She held his gaze. You're not the only one running from guilt. You're not the only one who knows what it means to fail someone. Tell me. Someday. When we're actually partners. When you've earned that truth the way I've had to earn yours. She reached up, fingers brushing his jaw. But understand this. I'm not some innocent thing to be preserved behind glass. I'm a survivor who's choosing to stand in your world. Don't insult me by trying to protect me from reality. His hand came up to cover hers, holding it against his face. I don't know how to do this. How to want something this much and not destroy it. Then we learn together. Her thumb traced his bottom lip. That's what partnership means. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers in that gesture that was becoming familiar. I'll try. But Megan, if anything happens to you because of me, then we'll handle it. Together. Not as master and possession. As partners. His kiss was gentle, almost reverent, tasting like scotch and confession. When he pulled back, something had shifted in his expression. Not lighter, exactly, but more open. More real. Tell me about her, Megan said softly. Not just how she died. Who she was. And in the growing darkness of his private sanctuary, Geraldo Milani did something he hadn't done in 8 years. He talked about his sister. And Megan listened, holding the broken pieces of a man who'd finally stopped pretending he didn't need someone to help carry them. Megan woke to unfamiliar sounds. Not the pre-dawn routine of the staff quarters, but the low murmur of male voices filtering through the bedroom door. She sat up, disoriented, registering the silk sheets and the massive bed that dominated Geraldo's private suite. He'd insisted she take the bedroom while he took the sofa, a gentleman's gesture that felt absurd given everything else. The clock read 6:15. Through the door, she could hear tension threading through the conversation. She pulled on the robe someone had left folded on the chair, black silk, obscenely expensive, clearly meant for her, and opened the door. 3 men occupied the living room. Geraldo stood by the windows, still wearing yesterday's shirt, sleeves rolled up, looking like he hadn't slept. 2 others sat on the sofa. One she recognized as Marco, Geraldo's driver. The other was unfamiliar, older, with calculating eyes that assessed her with uncomfortable precision. Geraldo's gaze snapped to her immediately. You should still be sleeping. Hard to sleep through a war council. She moved into the room, acutely aware of all three men tracking her movement. What's happened? The older man stood, all old-world courtesy that didn't quite mask the predator beneath. You must be Miss Weston. I'm Vincent Calabrese. I handle intelligence for Mr. Milani's organization. Megan nodded, not offering her hand. The formality felt like a test. What kind of intelligence? The kind that says yesterday's confrontation was just the opening move. Vincent's voice was measured, professional. Dino Marcello is making his play faster than we anticipated. Geraldo moved to her side, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that was becoming familiar. Vincent received confirmation an hour ago. Dino's been planning this for weeks. Planning what exactly? Megan kept her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. Vincent pulled out a tablet, swiping to display what looked like surveillance photos. There's a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night. Neutral ground. The Venetian Club. All 5 families will be represented to discuss territory disputes in the Port District. Standard business, Geraldo added. I have to attend. It would show weakness to refuse. Except it's not standard, Vincent continued. We have intel that Dino's been negotiating with the Rossi family. They're planning to use the meeting as cover for a more aggressive move. Against Geraldo? Megan looked between them. Against you. Marco spoke for the first time, his usually jovial expression grim. Dino's been spreading the narrative that Geraldo's distracted, weakened by an obsession with an outsider. He's positioning your presence as proof that Geraldo's losing his edge. Let him talk. Geraldo's voice was cold. Words don't matter. These ones do. Vincent enlarged one of the photos. We intercepted communications this morning. Dino's planning to challenge your claim publicly at the meeting. He'll demand proof of the relationship, suggest that Miss Weston is just a servant being used as a shield. And if he can provoke doubt, create the perception that she's unclaimed, unprotected, he'll take her. Geraldo's hand tightened on her back. Right there in neutral territory where I can't retaliate without breaking the accord. The room fell silent. Megan's mind raced, processing the implications. She'd been in Geraldo's world for less than 48 hours, and already she was the centerpiece of a trap designed to destroy him. What's the play? She asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. There has to be a countermove. We don't take you to the meeting. Marco said it like it was obvious. You stay here, heavily guarded, out of play. Dino can't challenge what he can't access. No. Geraldo's response was immediate, absolute. That proves his point. Makes her look like a weakness I'm hiding. Shows everyone I can't protect what's mine in public. So, what's the alternative? Megan turned to face him. Because I'm not staying locked in this wing while you walk into a trap alone. You don't understand what you're asking. His eyes were dark and tense. The Venetian Club isn't some restaurant. It's where the 5 families conduct business. Violence is prohibited on neutral ground, but that doesn't mean it's safe. One wrong move, one moment of vulnerability, and Dino wins. She held his gaze. I understand that. What I don't understand is how hiding me helps. Vincent cleared his throat. If I may, there is a third option. It's aggressive. Risky. But it could neutralize the threat entirely. Talk. Geraldo didn't look away from Megan. You take her to the meeting. Vincent's words fell like stones. But not as a servant or even as a claimed mistress. You present her as your formal partner. Acknowledged. Recognized. Protected by your name and position in a way that makes any move against her a direct declaration of war. You want me to parade her in front of every dangerous man in the city. Geraldo's voice was dangerously quiet. Make her a visible target to prove she's not a weakness. I want you to make her untouchable by making the cost of touching her too high. Vincent met his stare evenly. Right now, Dino sees an opportunity because he thinks she's a dirty secret. An obsession you're ashamed of. But if you walk in there with her on your arm, claim her publicly in front of all 5 families, establish her as your acknowledged partner, then any move against her becomes an act of war against your entire organization. It's a show of strength, Marco added. You're not hiding a weakness. You're displaying confidence. Saying she matters enough to protect openly. And if something goes wrong? If Dino makes a move anyway? Geraldo's hand slid to Megan's waist, pulling her closer. If he's desperate enough to risk breaking neutral ground, then we'll be ready. Vincent's smile was cold. We have 24 hours to prepare. To teach Miss Weston how to carry herself. How to read the room. How to be the partner you're claiming she is. Megan's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment she demanded being treated as an equal, a true partner. But the reality of what that meant was suddenly, terrifyingly concrete. She'd be walking into a room full of predators, every eye assessing her worth, her weakness, looking for the crack that would bring Geraldo down. She felt his tension, knew he was seconds from refusing, from locking her away despite her protests. And she understood why. This wasn't about control. It was about the sister he'd failed to protect. The innocence he'd watched destroyed. The guilt he'd carried for 8 years. But she wasn't Sophia. Do it. Her voice cut through the tension. Teach me what I need to know. I'll stand beside you tomorrow night. Megan, Geraldo's voice held warning and desperation in equal measure. You said you wanted partnership. She turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. This is what that looks like. Not me hiding while you face threats alone. Me standing with you. Visible. Claimed. Dangerous in my own right because touching me means war. The silence stretched. Vincent and Marco watched with professional detachment, but she could sense their judgment, their assessment of whether she was an asset or a liability. Finally, Geraldo's hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. You understand what you're agreeing to? Once we do this, there's no going back. Every enemy I have will know your face. Your name. What you mean to me. Good. Her smile was fierce, reckless. Let them know. Let them understand the cost. His kiss was hard, possessive, sealing a bargain more binding than any words. When he pulled back, his eyes held dark promise and darker fear. Then we prepare. He turned to Vincent. 24 hours. I want full security protocols. Background on everyone who'll be in that room. Contingency plans for every possible scenario. And her training? Vincent asked. Starts now. Geraldo's arm tightened around Megan's waist. She needs to learn how to survive in my world. How to stand beside me without flinching. How to make everyone in that room understand she's not a weakness to exploit. She's a line no one crosses. Marco's grin was sharp, approving. Exactly. Geraldo looked down at Megan, and in his eyes she saw pride mixing with terror. Welcome to the deep end, partner. If you had 24 hours to prepare for a room full of dangerous strangers, what would you demand to learn first? Subscribe to find out what happens next. The crash course in survival began before breakfast. Vincent and Marco left with orders to return at noon, and suddenly Megan was alone with Geraldo in a way that felt different from before. More focused. More dangerous. Strip. His voice was clinical, detached. She stared at him. Excuse me? The robe. The pajamas. Whatever the staff provided. Take them off. He was already moving toward his closet, not even looking at her. You need to understand how clothing works as armor in my world. Her hands trembled slightly as she untied the silk robe, letting it pool at her feet. The cotton sleep set felt suddenly inadequate under his scrutiny. This is about the dress for tomorrow? This is about everything. He emerged with an armful of fabric, laying pieces across the bed with precise care. In my world, every choice is a statement. Color. Cut. Skin shown or hidden. It all communicates power, availability, threat level. He held up a red dress, elegant and revealing. This says you're a mistress. Beautiful, valued for aesthetics, but ultimately disposable. He tossed it aside. This. He lifted a black sheath, conservative and expensive. This says you're claimed but silent. Protected property. And what do I need to say? She moved closer, studying the options. That you're dangerous. That touching you has consequences. That you chose this position and have the strength to hold it. His hand skimmed over a deep emerald silk. This. Sophisticated enough to show you belong. Bold enough to show you're not afraid. cut to suggest intimacy with me specifically while remaining untouchable to everyone else. Megan took the dress, feeling the weight of the silk. And how do I prove I belong when everyone knows I was your maid 2 days ago? By making them forget you were ever anything but exactly what you are now. He pulled out a chair, sitting with predatory grace. Put it on. We're going to work on how you move. The next hour was excruciating. Geraldo critiqued everything. The way she walked, too deferential, eyes down from 6 months of trained invisibility. The way she held her shoulders, too tense, broadcasting discomfort. The way she touched things, asking permission with her body language instead of taking what was hers. Again. His voice was merciless. You're not asking to exist in my space anymore, Megan. You live here. This is your territory too. Own it. She crossed the room for the 10th time, forcing her spine straight, her gaze direct. When she reached for the Scotch decanter without hesitation, pouring herself a drink she didn't want, his nod of approval felt like victory. Better. He stood, moving behind her. Now the hard part. Reading intent. He was close enough that she could feel his heat, smell the sandalwood that clung to his skin. His hand settled on her waist, possessive and claiming. Tomorrow night, I'll touch you like this constantly. It's necessary. It shows ownership, protection. But you need to understand the difference between my touch and threat. How? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Context. His other hand traced up her arm, fingers ghosting over her shoulder. I'll touch you in ways that look intimate but give you tactical advantage. Like this. His hand settled at the small of her back. Looks romantic. Actually positions you so I'm between you and the door. Or this. He turned her, one hand cupping her face while the other stayed at her waist. Looks possessive. Actually lets me read your expression, gauge if you're comfortable or threatened. And if someone else touches me, they won't. His voice went cold. But if they try, you need to know how to read it fast. Aggressive versus political. Testing boundaries versus actual threat. He spent the next hour running scenarios. Standing too close. Hands that lingered. Comments that seemed friendly but carried threat. Teaching her to distinguish between the dangerous games men played for position and actual predatory intent. The truly dangerous ones won't be obvious, he explained. They'll be charming. Courteous. They'll compliment you while assessing your weaknesses. The ones who stare openly, who make crude comments, those are posturing. It's the quiet ones studying you who are actually calculating how to use you. So trust no one. Trust me. His hands framed her face. Tomorrow night, you don't take drinks from anyone else. You don't accept invitations to step away from my side. You don't engage in private conversation. Anyone who wants your attention goes through me first. That sounds like being property again. It's survival. His thumb traced her bottom lip. Once you're established, once everyone understands the cost of crossing you, you'll have more freedom. But tomorrow is about making the claim stick. About showing enough unity that no one sees a gap to exploit. By noon, Megan's feet ached from walking in the obscenely expensive heels Geraldo had produced. Her face hurt from holding the careful expression he'd taught her, pleasant but unrevealing, engaged but untouchable. Her mind spun with names and faces Vincent had made her memorize during lunch. The Rossi family, old money, traditional, likely to view her as beneath Geraldo's station. The Calabrese faction, Vincent's cousins, neutral but watching for weakness. The Chin Syndicate, newer power, calculating, potentially interested in alliance. And Dino Marcello's people, actively hostile, looking for any excuse to challenge. You need to know who's watching and why, Vincent explained, pointing to photos. This man, Paolo Rossi, will test you with propriety. He'll be excessively formal, waiting for you to make an etiquette mistake. This one, James Chin, will try to engage you directly, seeing if Geraldo allows it or if you're too controlled to respond. And Dino? Megan studied the photo of the man who'd started this cascade. Dino will go for humiliation. Vincent's voice was grim. He'll reference your past position. Suggest Geraldo's pussy-whipped or desperate. He'll try to make you react emotionally, cry or lash out, proving you can't handle the pressure. So I stay calm no matter what he says. You stay untouchable. Geraldo appeared with coffee, setting it in front of her with casual intimacy. You make every insult bounce off like he's boring you. Like his opinion matters so little you can barely register it. The afternoon brought wardrobe refinement. A woman named Sophia appeared with jewelry, makeup, accessories. She worked with brisk efficiency, explaining the language of adornment in Geraldo's world. Diamonds say old money, established power, Sophia said, holding up chandelier earrings. But they also say traditional, potentially controlled by family wealth. These. She lifted elegant emerald drops. These match the dress, show Geraldo's taste and investment, but they're bold enough to suggest your own personality. Megan studied her reflection as Sophia worked. The woman looking back was almost unrecognizable. Sophisticated. Dangerous. Every inch the partner of a man who controlled half the city's underworld. By evening, exhaustion had settled into her bones. But Geraldo wasn't finished. They sat at his dining table, and he walked her through the specific codes that would govern tomorrow night. If I touch your left wrist twice, we leave immediately. If I move you to my right side instead of my left, it means I've identified a threat, and I need you silent and compliant until we're clear. If I introduce you using your full name, it's formal and political. If I just use Megan, it's personal and intimate. How do I signal you? She needed this to be reciprocal, needed some control. If you're uncomfortable, touch your necklace. If you sense threat I'm not seeing, touch my hand twice. If you need out of a conversation, look at me and ask about the time. His hand covered hers. And if anything goes seriously wrong, if you feel actual danger, you say the word red, and I don't care what political consequences follow, we're gone. The code settled something in her chest. Not just his protection, but her agency within it. They ate dinner in unusual silence, the weight of tomorrow pressing down. Afterward, Geraldo pulled her to the sofa, sitting close enough that she could feel his tension. I need you to understand something. His voice was rougher than usual. Tomorrow night, I'll be cold. Controlled. I'll touch you like you're mine, but I won't show emotion. It's necessary for the image we're projecting. I understand. But it's a lie. He turned her to face him. Every moment I'm not showing what you mean to me, I'll be feeling it twice as intensely. Every man who looks at you, every threat that moves in your direction, I'll be calculating how to destroy them while keeping my face blank. Then we're both acting. She touched his face, thumb tracing his jaw. Both pretending to be colder than we are. His kiss was desperate, all the emotion he'd be hiding tomorrow pouring out now. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. 24 hours ago, you were adjusting my tie. Now you're about to walk into the most dangerous room in the city as my acknowledged partner. Terrified yet? She tried for lightness. Absolutely. His honesty was devastating. But also proud. You've learned more in one day than most people learn in years. Good teacher. She managed to smile. And highly motivated student. They spent the last hours before sleep running through scenarios one final time. By the time Geraldo finally insisted she rest, Megan's mind was a whirlwind of names, codes, strategic touches, and political landmines. She lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if this was how soldiers felt before battle. Prepared as possible, but knowing no amount of preparation guaranteed survival. Through the door, she could hear Geraldo on the phone, his voice low and commanding. Making final arrangements. Ensuring every contingency was covered. Tomorrow, she'd stand beside him in a room full of predators and prove she deserved to be there. Tomorrow, she'd make Dino Marcello regret ever seeing her as a weakness to exploit. Tomorrow, she'd become exactly what she'd bargained for. A partner. Morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Megan woke to silence, the kind that felt too heavy, too deliberate. She lay still for a moment, watching dawn break over the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and tried to remember the last time she'd felt genuine safety. 6 months ago, she'd thought invisibility was safety. Now she understood it had only been the illusion of it. The bedroom door opened without warning. Geraldo stood in the doorway, already dressed in a black suit that looked like it cost more than she'd earned in a year as his maid. His hair was perfectly styled, his tie knotted with precision. But his eyes gave him away. dark and turbulent, revealing the storm he was working so hard to contain. "Sophia's here," he said, voice carefully neutral. "She'll help you get ready." "What time do we leave?" 7. 3 hours. His hand gripped the doorframe like he needed the anchor. "Vincent wants us there exactly on time. Not early enough to seem anxious. Not late enough to suggest fear. Calculated to the minute." She sat up, pulling the sheet with her. "Very you." Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his face, there and gone. "Everything about tonight is calculated. It has to be." He left without another word, and moments later Sophia entered with an efficiency that suggested she'd done this before. Dressed women for war disguised as social events. The emerald dress hung on a garment bag she carried, along with a case that probably contained enough jewelry to fund a small country. "Mr. Milani is very specific about tonight," Sophia said, laying everything out with meticulous care. "He wants you perfection. No pressure." Megan tried for humor, but it fell flat. Sophia's expression softened slightly. "He's terrified. I've worked for him 5 years, and I've never seen him like this. That should tell you something. That I'm a liability? That you matter." Sophia began unpacking cosmetics. "In his world, Miss Weston, the things that matter are the things that can destroy you. The fact that he's this afraid means you've already won the only battle that counts." The next 2 hours were a transformation. Sophia worked with the precision of a surgeon, every choice deliberate. The makeup was dramatic but not overdone, emphasizing Megan's eyes, making them impossible to look away from. Her hair was swept into an elegant twist that exposed her neck, vulnerable but also regal. The emerald dress fit like it had been made for her body specifically, which it probably had been. The neckline was high enough to suggest class, but the back plunged low enough to be provocative. The slit up the side allowed movement while drawing attention to the dangerously high heels. The jewelry came last. Emerald drops for her ears. A delicate necklace that drew the eye to her throat. And a ring. Not an engagement ring, but something equally significant. A wide band of platinum set with a single perfect emerald, sized exactly for her right hand. "This is from Mr. Milani," Sophia said quietly. "It's a protection piece. Everyone in that room will recognize it. It marks you as claimed by the Milani family specifically. Not just as his lover, but as someone under his formal protection." Megan stared at the ring, understanding its weight. This wasn't romance. This was a declaration of war against anyone who tried to touch her. She slipped it on. It fit perfectly. When Sophia finally stepped back, Megan barely recognized herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was sophisticated, dangerous, completely untouchable. No trace remained of the invisible maid who'd adjusted ties and served coffee. "You look like you belong," Sophia said with something like approval. "Now you just have to believe it." After Sophia left, Megan stood alone in the bedroom, trying to steady her breathing. Through the door, she could hear voices. Geraldo giving final instructions to his security team. The controlled chaos of preparation. In 3 hours, everything would change. Either she'd prove herself capable of standing in his world, or Dino would succeed in exposing her as the weakness Geraldo couldn't afford. The door opened. Geraldo stopped dead when he saw her, something raw and unguarded crossing his face before he locked it down. But in that moment, she saw it. Not just desire. Not just possession. Something deeper that neither of them had named yet. "You're staring," she said softly. "You're devastating." He moved into the room, circling her slowly like he was memorizing every detail. "Perfect. Exactly what I needed." What you needed, or what they need to see. Both. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw. "Megan, once we walk into that room, everything becomes performance. I'll touch you, claim you, show ownership. But it's all tactical. I know. We went through this. I need you to know it again." His hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "Because right now, looking at you like this, I want to skip the entire fucking evening and keep you here where you're safe. But you can't." "No." The word came out rough. "Canceling would show weakness. Hiding you would confirm every accusation Dino's making. We have to do this. Then let's do it right." She covered his hand with hers. You taught me well. I won't let you down. That's not what I'm afraid of. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I'm afraid I'll let you down. That I'm making the same mistake I made with Sophia. Putting someone I care about in danger because I'm too proud or too stupid to find another way. This is different. She held his gaze. Sophia didn't choose. She didn't know what she was walking into. I do. I chose this. Chose you. Chose to stand beside you instead of behind you. You could still change your mind. His voice held desperate hope. I could have Vincent take you somewhere safe. Somewhere Dino could never reach. You could have a life that doesn't involve being yours? She smiled, fierce and certain. Too late. I'm already yours. The ring proves it. The dress proves it. Walking into that room will just make it official. His kiss was hard, claiming, edged with the fear he wouldn't show anyone else. When he pulled back, his control had reassembled, the mask sliding into place. But his hand lingered on her waist, fingers pressing into the silk like he was anchoring himself. Rules for tonight, he said, voice shifting to business. You stay on my left unless I move you. You don't accept drinks from anyone but Marco, who'll be serving our table. You smile, but don't engage in extended conversation with anyone I haven't explicitly approved. And if I give you the signal, we leave immediately. No questions, no hesitation. Red means danger. Touch your left wrist twice means we're leaving. Move me right means threat identified. She recited the codes they'd drilled. I remember. And if Dino says something designed to humiliate you, I stay untouchable. Bored. Like his opinion couldn't matter less. She'd practiced this response until it was instinctive. He'll reference you being my maid. He'll make it sound sordid, like I'm slumming or you're grasping above your station. And I'll look at him like he's reciting the weather. Mildly interesting at best. His smile was fierce, proud. You're going to be magnificent. Or I'll crash and burn spectacularly. Not an option. His hand tightened on her waist. You crash, I burn the entire city down finding who pushed you. The casual violence in his tone should have terrified her. Instead, it settled something in her chest. This man, this dangerous, controlled man who ran an empire built on blood and fear, was more afraid of losing her than of any rival's challenge. Marco appeared in the doorway, tactfully looking away from their intimate proximity. Cars are ready, boss. Vincent's already en route to secure the venue. Geraldo nodded, but didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Megan's face, drinking in details like he was memorizing her. When he finally spoke, his voice was low enough that only she could hear. After tonight, everything changes. If we pull this off, you'll be recognized as mine by every family in the city. Protected, but also watched. Judged. You'll never be invisible again. Good. She straightened her shoulders, feeling the armor of silk and jewels settle into place. I'm done being invisible. His hand slid from her waist to capture hers, fingers intertwining. The emerald ring caught the light, brilliant and unmistakable. Together, they walked toward the door where Marco waited. In the elevator descending 40 floors, Geraldo's hand never left hers. His thumb traced patterns on her wrist, the only sign of his nervousness. Megan focused on breathing, on maintaining the untouchable expression Sophia had perfected, on becoming the woman she needed to be to survive the next 3 hours. The lobby was empty, cleared by security. 3 black cars waited at the curb, idling. Vincent stood by the middle one, his expression professionally blank, but eyes sharp as he assessed Megan's transformation. She'll do, was all he said, but there was approval underneath. She'll more than do. Geraldo's voice held an edge. She's perfect. As they slid into the car's leather interior, Megan caught her reflection in the tinted window. The woman looking back was a stranger. Sophisticated. Dangerous. Claimed. Ready? Geraldo's hand found hers again in the darkness. She thought of the invisible maid who'd adjusted his tie 3 days ago. Of the girl who'd believed safety meant going unnoticed. Of everything she'd been before this dangerous, impossible man had looked at her and decided she was worth claiming. Ready, she said. The car pulled into traffic, heading toward the Venetian Club and whatever waited there. Beside her, Geraldo sat rigid with control, every inch the powerful boss. but his hand gripped hers like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. And Megan realized with sudden clarity that tonight wasn't just about her proving she could stand in his world. It was about both of them proving they could stand together. Partners walking into battle, dressed for war, and refusing to flinch. The Venetian Club occupied a historic building in the financial district, all old money elegance and carefully maintained neutrality. As their car pulled to the curb, Megan could see other vehicles already there, security teams positioned with tactical precision disguised as valet service. Through the ornate windows, shadows moved in the amber light. Wait. Geraldo's hand tightened on hers. Let Vincent clear the entrance first. They sat in tense silence while Vincent exited, exchanging words with the security at the door. Finally, he nodded. Geraldo's door opened, and he stepped out with fluid grace, turning immediately to offer Megan his hand. The moment her heels touched pavement, she felt the weight of watching eyes. Security teams tracking her movement. Figures in the windows above assessing this woman on Geraldo Milani's arm. She channeled everything Sophia had taught her, spine straight, chin level, expression pleasant but unrevealing. Her hand rested lightly on Geraldo's arm, claiming the right to touch him as much as being claimed by him. Breathe, he murmured, so low only she could hear. You're perfect. The entrance hall was spectacular. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, oil paintings worth fortunes. And men. Dangerous men in expensive suits, each one radiating the particular threat that came with power and violence carefully controlled. Conversations paused as they entered. Every eye tracked their progress. Geraldo's hand moved to her waist, possessive and protective. He didn't hurry, didn't show concern. Just guided her through the space with absolute confidence, nodding to some men, ignoring others with calculated precision. Paolo Rossi approached first, all old-world courtesy and assessing eyes. Geraldo. He offered his hand, then turned his attention to Megan with uncomfortable intensity. You must introduce me to your companion. Megan Weston. Geraldo's use of her full name signaled formal, political. My partner. The word carried weight, intentional and claiming. Charmed. Paolo took her hand, his grip testing, too firm, held too long. I wasn't aware you were bringing a guest this evening. How unexpected. Megan smiled, pulling her hand back with just enough pressure to communicate she wasn't intimidated. Mr. Milani and I don't require permission to exist together. Her voice was steady, pleasant, completely unbothered. Something flickered in Paolo's eyes. Approval or irritation, she couldn't tell. Of course. Enjoy your evening. Well done, Geraldo murmured as they moved deeper into the room. He tested you. You passed. The main hall was set up with tables arranged in a careful hierarchy. The 5 families each had designated spaces, neutral ground marked by invisible but understood boundaries. Geraldo guided her to a table near the center, prominent but not aggressive. Marco was already there, standing ready with drinks. Scotch for Geraldo. Mineral water with lime for Megan, presented in a crystal glass that matched Geraldo's. The equality of the presentation wasn't accidental. They sat. Geraldo's hand remained on her thigh beneath the table, hidden but constant. Around them, the room filled. James Chin and his people, watching with calculating interest. The Calabrese faction, Vincent's cousins, maintaining careful neutrality. And then, with deliberate drama, Dino Marcello made his entrance. He'd brought more people than appropriate for a neutral meeting. 6 men flanked him, all barely contained aggression in tailored suits. Dino himself wore arrogance like cologne, his smile sharp as he surveyed the room. When his eyes landed on Megan, they lit with malicious satisfaction. Showtime, Geraldo said softly. Remember everything. Dino made a show of greeting the other families first, working the room with practiced charm. But his trajectory was obvious. He was circling, building anticipation, making everyone wait for the confrontation they all knew was coming. Finally, he approached their table. Geraldo stood smoothly, pulling Megan up with him. The movement positioned her slightly behind him, protected but still visible. Geraldo. Dino's smile was all teeth. So glad you could make it. And you brought your He paused deliberately, eyes raking over Megan. Pet? Is that the right word? Partner. Geraldo's voice was granite. As you're well aware. Am I? Dino circled slightly, forcing Geraldo to shift to keep Megan protected. Because I remember her serving me scotch in your penthouse just last week. Funny how quickly staff get promoted these days. The room had gone quiet. Every conversation stopped. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the public challenge, the test of Geraldo's claim. Megan felt Geraldo's tension, knew he was seconds from a response that would escalate into violence. So she moved first. She stepped around Geraldo, meeting Dino's eyes directly. Her smile was pleasant, bored, like he was reciting something tedious. I'm sorry, I don't remember you. Her voice carried in the sudden silence. Were you the one who couldn't follow basic etiquette? That must be embarrassing for you. Dino's face flushed. Careful, little girl. You're playing games you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She took a deliberate sip of her water, the emerald ring catching the light. You're trying to provoke a reaction because you're threatened by what I represent. It's transparent. And honestly, it's beneath the sophistication of this gathering. The silence intensified. Several men shifted, surprised. Paolo Rossi's eyebrow raised. Even James' chin looked impressed. Threatened? Dino's laugh was forced. By Geraldo's charity case? By a maid pretending to be something she's not? Geraldo's hand moved to Megan's waist, pulling her firmly against his side. His voice, when he spoke, was absolutely controlled. Megan isn't pretending anything. She is exactly what I've claimed her to be. My acknowledged partner, protected by my name, my resources, and my absolute willingness to go to war for her. Is that clear enough, or do you need further clarification? I need proof. Dino leaned forward. Proof she's actually yours and not just window dressing. Because from where I'm standing, she looks like an unclaimed prize. And in our world, unclaimed prizes are fair game. The threat was explicit. Megan felt the room shift, every man watching to see how Geraldo would respond. Violence was prohibited on neutral ground, but there were other ways to claim, to prove ownership. Geraldo's control was terrifying. When he spoke, his voice was soft, deadly. You want proof? Fine. He turned Megan to face him, both hands cupping her face with possessive gentleness. The gesture was intimate, claiming, impossible to misinterpret. Then he kissed her. Not gently. Not for show. With the kind of consuming intensity that made every person in that room understand exactly what she meant to him. When he pulled back, his eyes never left hers. Mine, he said clearly. Acknowledged. Protected. Claimed. Anyone who touches her declares war on me personally. Anyone who questions her place insults me directly. Is that proof enough, Dino? But Dino wasn't finished. His smile turned vicious. Pretty words. But I notice you haven't mentioned marriage. Haven't made it permanent. Which means she's still just temporary. Still just enough. Vincent appeared seemingly from nowhere, his voice cutting through Dino's challenge. You've made your point. You've tested the claim. It's been answered. Continue, and you violate neutral ground protocols. Dino's jaw clenched. This isn't over. It is. Paolo Rossi spoke up, his voice carrying authority. The claim has been made publicly and answered definitively. Miss Weston is under Milani protection. The matter is closed. James Chin nodded agreement. Challenging further would be inappropriate. Dino looked around the room, seeing the unified front forming against him. His gambit had failed. Instead of exposing weakness, he'd forced every major family to acknowledge Megan's position. To validate Geraldo's claim. Fine. Dino's smile was pure malice. But don't think this makes her untouchable forever. Everyone has vulnerabilities. Even acknowledged partners. Then you'll have time to discover that threatening what's mine is the fastest way to ensure you don't have a future. Geraldo's voice promised violence. Now, unless you have actual business to discuss, I suggest you find your table. Dino left, his people following, but the damage was done. Not to Geraldo. To Dino himself. He'd played his hand publicly and lost. The room slowly returned to normal conversation. But everything had changed. Men who'd been watching with assessment now nodded respect. The Calabrese faction raised glasses in subtle acknowledgement. Even Paolo Rossi offered a small, approving smile. Megan's legs felt weak. She'd just survived her first real confrontation in Geraldo's world. Had stood her ground against a direct threat. Had proven she could be more than just protected, she could protect herself with words and attitude when violence wasn't an option. Geraldo's arm tightened around her waist. His lips brushed her ear. Magnificent. You were absolutely magnificent. I didn't get us killed. That counts as success, right? You did more than that. His voice held fierce pride. You made them see you as mine by choice, not by force. That's more powerful than any claim I could make. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of careful conversations and political maneuvering. But the critical moment had passed. Megan had been tested and had proven herself. Dino had been challenged and had lost ground. As they finally left, walking toward their waiting car, Geraldo pulled her close. I've never been more terrified or more proud. Just terrified, Megan admitted. But I'd do it again. You won't have to. His kiss was gentle this time, promise instead of possession. After tonight, everyone knows. You're mine. And I'm yours. Completely. The car door closed behind them and finally, she could breathe. Would you have the courage to face down a room full of dangerous strangers to prove you belonged? Drop your answer in the comments below. The penthouse was silent when they returned, the city sprawling 40 floors below in glittering indifference. Megan's hands shook as she removed the emerald earrings, the adrenaline that had sustained her through the evening finally draining away. In the mirror's reflection, she could see Geraldo behind her, watching with an intensity that made her breath catch. You're trembling. He moved closer, his hands settling on her shoulders. Delayed reaction. She set the earrings down carefully, focusing on the simple task to keep herself grounded. I kept it together all night, and now my body's remembering it was terrified. You didn't show it. Not once. His fingers found the pins holding her hair, removing them with surprising gentleness until the dark waves tumbled free. When Dino challenged you, when every eye in that room was watching for you to break, you stood there like you'd been doing it your entire life. I had a good teacher. She met his eyes in the mirror. And the right motivation. What motivation? His hands stilled on her shoulders. You. She turned to face him. The look on your face when Dino called me window dressing. You were seconds from violence that would have cost you politically. So I stepped in. Not because I'm brave, but because watching you sacrifice your position for me wasn't acceptable. So you sacrificed yourself instead. I chose myself. She corrected, reaching up to loosen his tie, the same gesture that had started everything 3 days ago. I chose us. There's a difference. His hand caught hers, holding it against his chest where his heart hammered. Do you understand what tonight means? What you agreed to by standing there, by letting me claim you in front of every family. It means I'm yours. Publicly. Irrevocably. It means you're trapped in this life. His voice roughened. You can't go back to invisibility. Can't walk away. Every enemy I have now knows your face, your name. You'll always be a target. Always be looking over your shoulder. I know. She stepped closer until they were breathing the same air. And I'm choosing it anyway. Choosing you. Why? The question came out desperate. You could have demanded Vincent take you somewhere safe. Could have refused to go tonight. Why choose this? Choose me? Because 3 days ago, you looked at me like I mattered. She cupped his face, thumb tracing his jaw. Because you've been protecting me for 6 months while torturing yourself with restraint. Because when Dino threatened me, you were ready to burn the entire world down. Because you told me about Sophia and trusted me with your guilt and your fear. Because when I demanded partnership, you gave it to me instead of just taking what you wanted. Megan, her name came out broken. I love you. The words felt dangerous and inevitable. I probably loved you before I knew what you were. Before I understood this world. And now that I do understand, now that I know exactly how dark and violent and impossible this life is, I still choose it. I choose you. His kiss was desperate, claiming, edged with something that felt like relief. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. I've been in love with you since that interview. Since you sat in my office and looked at me without fear, like I was just a man instead of a monster. You're both. She smiled against his lips. But you're my monster now. He lifted her easily, and she wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her to the bedroom. The emerald dress whispered against his suit, silk on wool, elegant armor being shed. He set her down beside the bed, hands finding the hidden zipper with practiced ease. Last chance. His voice was rough as the dress pulled at her feet. Once we do this, once I make you mine completely, there's no going back. I don't want to go back. She reached for his tie, pulling him closer. I want to go forward. With you. The last of his control shattered. His kiss turned hungry, possessive, months of restraint finally unleashed. Megan matched his intensity, pouring 3 days of fear and adrenaline and desperate choice into the connection between them. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, kneading skin, needing proof this was real. He was surprisingly gentle as he laid her on the bed, his body covering hers with careful weight. Every touch was a question, every kiss a claim being verified. When he finally made her as completely, she understood why he'd waited, why the restraint had nearly destroyed him. This wasn't just sex. It was a vow. A permanent mark. A choice neither of them could undo. After, they lay tangled together in the silk sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her spine. The city glittered beyond the windows, indifferent to the fact that everything had changed. No regrets? His voice rumbled beneath her ear. None. She tilted her head to look at him. You? Only that I waited so long. That I let fear and guilt keep me from this. From you. You were protecting me. I was protecting myself. His hand cupped her face. From feeling this much. From having something I could lose. Sophia destroyed me when she died. The thought of losing you the same way, you won't. She kissed him softly. Because I'm not her. I'm not innocent or sheltered or unprepared. I walked into that room tonight knowing exactly what I was doing. Made myself a target by choice. That's the difference. You're terrifying, you know that? His smile was genuine, unguarded. Absolutely terrifying. Good. She settled back against his chest. In your world, terrifying is probably safer than sweet. In my world, you're perfect. He pulled her closer. My partner. My equal. Mine. Yours. She agreed. But you're mine too. That's how partnership works. He laughed, the sound rusty but real. I'm going to have to get used to that. You have time. She yawned, exhaustion finally catching up. We have time. They drifted towards sleep wrapped around each other, safe in the temporary sanctuary of his penthouse. But morning would bring new challenges. Dino wouldn't forgive tonight's humiliation. The other families would watch for weakness. And Megan would have to learn to navigate a world where love and violence intertwined so completely it was impossible to separate them. But for now, in the quiet darkness, they had this. Each other. A choice made freely despite impossible odds. A partnership forged in silk and danger and desperate honesty. 3 months later, Megan stood in Geraldo's office wearing a black sheath dress and the emerald ring that had become her signature. She'd learned to read threat assessments, to sit in on strategy meetings, to be the partner she demanded to become. The other families had accepted her presence, some grudgingly, others with genuine respect. She was no longer Geraldo's weakness. She was his strength, the person who could see angles he missed, who could navigate situations where his reputation for violence made diplomacy impossible. Dino Marcello had made one more attempt to challenge her position. He disappeared the next day. Permanently. Now, as Geraldo reviewed contracts, his hand absently reached for hers, fingers intertwining with familiar ease. Marco entered without knocking, dropping a small velvet box on the desk. From the jeweler, Boss. As requested. Geraldo opened it, revealing a ring. Not emerald this time. Diamond. Simple, elegant, unmistakably an engagement ring. We're already publicly committed, Megan said, her heart hammering. Everyone knows I'm yours. They know you're my partner. My acknowledged claim. He slid from his chair, kneeling beside hers with the ring between them. I want them to know you're my wife. My choice. My forever. In your world, Marriage is political. Strategic. In my world, everything is political. His smile was soft, genuine. But this is also personal. Entirely, completely personal. I'm asking you to marry me not because it strengthens my position, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Because you chose me when you could have run. Because you're the bravest, most terrifying person I've ever met, and I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that courage. Tears blurred her vision. Yes. Obviously yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, beside the emerald band that had become familiar. Then he kissed her, gentle and claiming and full of promise. The maid who'd adjusted his tie was gone, transformed into something more dangerous, more powerful. A partner who stood beside one of the most feared men in the city and made him better. Who'd chosen a life of silk and danger and impossible love, and made it work through sheer force of will. In the window's reflection, Megan caught sight of herself. Sophisticated. Confident. Dangerous. Finally visible in all the ways that mattered. And absolutely, completely his. Just as he was hers. Forever. Thanks for listening to this story. Please subscribe and click the video on the left side of your screen. It's even more interesting than the one you just listened to.